We know that in the area of news and politics, as in virtually everything else, influencers are all over the place and they have an effect. They influence things almost by definition. Well, let's talk about where people are getting their information across different generations to try to understand sort of the map right now of social media. And so for news influencers, broadly defined, are pretty big, pretty popular. 1 in 5 US adults do get their news, at least in part, from quote unquote influencers, that 21%. And you can see a not necessarily surprising difference in how likely that is across demographics. And so 18 to 29-year-olds, basically the core of Gen Z, 37%, and it drops down from there to your grandma and your grandpa, very unlikely. 7% are following, I don't know, Logan Paul or something, I don't know. But anyway, there are a few, I guess. And so the difference, you could break it down in ways other than just age. The sort of influencers that people are getting their information from, where are they coming from politically? I find that to be interesting, particularly as we're seeing a shakeup between the very right-focused Twitter and some of these alternatives. And so news influencers in this study by Pew, 27% were right-leaning, 21% left-leaning, so outnumbered there, and about fully half don't have any clear affiliation. So that could be nonpartisan news that's being spread. It could be news that's sort of muddled, and some of the perspectives are one and some of the other it's hard to classify. And then when you look at the current suite of social media sites, you can see that of all of them, only TikTok has a slight lead in left-leaning influencers over right-leaning ones. And that includes our platform of YouTube, by the way. Facebook has been right-wing for a really long time. And I would also say basically any of these platforms where you can easily purchase advertising is gonna have a massive right-wing advantage. It's honestly, this is where, like, this is now ancient history, but Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh and all of them had massive investments in advertising early on, where their backers, the millionaires and the billionaires, bought literally millions of dollars in ads on a monthly basis. They became huge, they crowded out other news. And because they were getting engagement, because they were paying for it, Facebook started to try to go in that direction more. They advantaged the sort of content that was getting eyeballs because they could put more ads on it. And so the stranglehold that the right has on Facebook continues to this day. It's not as big on some of the other platforms. And in particular, Daria, you're on TikTok, you produce content there. That's a place where the left has a presence. What do you think about all this?
I wonder how much gender plays into this as well. I see TikTok as more of it's kind of equal in terms of gender. Honestly, probably more woman leaning, and that might have something to do with it being more left leaning as opposed to YouTube or even like the Discord, or we see like Twitch streamers. They have a little bit more male dominated presence. And with streamers like Aiden Ross, for example, who had Donald Trump on his platform, his main thing isn't politics. He talks about video games and stuff like that. But then you have politics, which seeps into it. And then they're being influenced in that way. It's a little bit insidious. So I wonder how much, gender plays a role in this. I don't know if you know your own demographics, John, of your show, like how many women watch versus how many men watch. But
yeah, so it definitely, basically the analytics I have is on YouTube, and generally, and this has been pretty true for years, it's like almost always 70-30 men to women. 30% of the audience is women, 70% is men. And it being YouTube and it being news, I don't think that's necessarily all that surprising. What I can put up, and I'd like your opinions on, is the breakdown of gender in the influencers that we're talking about on different platforms. And so to your point, TikTok does have the largest share of women influencers doing news content at 45. So they're still outnumbered, but only slightly. Whereas, when you go to like YouTube, it's 28% women.
No, that makes sense to me. And I see that reflected in my algorithms for sure. We have people like the news lady, we have people like V, who's not identifying. Like there's more platforms that allow you to kind of pick and choose where you want your news content from. And I'm seeing that a lot of young males want people who are like macho and identify with them. And a lot of times they're not getting that on TikTok. So it's not surprising.
So you're saying I should start posting videos there? Anyway.
I'm saying you should. They would like no, you should no, no, really, you should. They would like it. We're missing that sort of
Yeah.
content.
Okay, yes, it's all gonna be done. I'm gonna be like hanging from high things, holding weights and things like that, while wolves snarl in the background, and I'm gonna win over all those young disaffected men. But
Exactly.
anyway, yeah, no, I do agree. It's interesting. I wonder if you could break these numbers down by year, if you're starting to see an increase in like equality. Like TikTok probably has been pretty even from the beginning, but I think men are more inclined to think that their opinion is worth saying, whether or not it is. I think that's been a longstanding pattern. And I also think, you know, social media is super toxic. If you're coming into an area where people like you are far less represented, and a lot of people don't like that. Right
Mm.
wingers are incredibly hostile to anyone who doesn't look or think like them entering these places. I imagine the feedback is going to be vicious in terms of threats and all of that. And so the people who continue to show up on these charts are those for whom they're probably having to weather a lot of that. And others might have been driven away. They might have like temporarily dabbled in that sort of stuff and then found that it was just too toxic.
Like, what's your
But
take? All right, go ahead.
no, sorry, continue.
What's your take on the whole like the left needs a Joe Rogan thing? Like, we need
I
some.
think I think that when someone says that, they should say what they actually mean by that.
Okay.
Because if what they mean is we need something that a lot of people pay attention to, yeah, sure, we do. We do. What aspects of Joe Rogan specifically, though, do these people want in whatever the left wing version of it is? There are podcasts of left wingers, like that is a thing that exists. There are certainly male left wingers who have podcasts. I don't think that's what people mean. I think that people should really think about what they want when they say that. Like having popular stuff that's consumed across a wide variety. Like I agree with that. We should have that. But if it's just like I could do a left wing podcast where I bring on conspiracy theorists and people talk about health stuff they don't understand. I could do that. I don't know that that necessarily is helpful to the movement, but anyway, what do you think about it?
Maybe that's what we need. Like, maybe we need one person who's willing to go to the extremes and platform people who might not necessarily be smart but have some crazy ideas that young people in particular are willing to listen to, because I think that's what Joe Rogan's really good at. I mean, some of the stuff I've watched a little bit of it. He even doesn't agree with some of his guests, but he's willing to give them 3 hours to sit there and talk about it, where I'm sure a lot of more reputable people wouldn't.
Yeah.
So maybe we
Yeah, the
need.
question is though, okay, so you bring on like people who talk about like 5G giving you COVID or whatever. So like I could do that and disagree forcefully against them. I don't know if those sorts of people that I'm supposed to be like luring in with that content are gonna like that. I could just agree with it or not challenge it, which is generally, I think, what Joe Rogan does. Not always, but generally, in which case, is it a left-wing Joe Rogan or is it literally just Joe Rogan? I don't know. It's like kind of like a rock in the hard place situation, but I'm glad that we're continuing to have the conversation. I think it is something that we should be thinking about. Members make a difference here at TYT. You help make the show happen, and we see you in the chat with your loyalty badge. Click the join button to become a member today.